over here in Shanghai, China. And let's do a sound check before we start this live Q&A. So please let me know if you're watching, if you can hear me. That would be very helpful. So just leave a comment, let me know if you can hear me, and we'll get going. Looks like we have Louis Patino and Captain Green. Josh in Jesus says there's a low microphone. Okay, low microphone. Let's see what we can do about that. Hello, testing. How is it now? How does it sound now? Oh, Thomas Jeffley is in the house. Thomas, how you doing, man? Thomas is an old friend of mine. Man, Thomas and I trained together back in the United States. And dude, is a fantastic wrestler, learned to be a MMA fighter, won his cage fighting debut. Awesome dude. Thomas, thank you for joining us. Hope everything is going well with you and yours. But how's the sound, guys? How is the sound? I heard the microphone is a little low. Thomas, good to hear you're doing well, man. Welcome. Jonathan says it sounds good. Okay. Is it good to get good? Okay, we had a question about wrestling. Lewis wants to know, is it possible to get good at wrestling even if someone never wrestled in high school or college? Yes. Yes, it is. The secret is you practice wrestling. And I know a lot of people get in this mindset that, oh, it's too late if you didn't do it in high school or college. And we build up this mythos in our mind like, oh, we can't learn to wrestle because we didn't do it when we were a kid, or we didn't do it in college, we weren't on the team, we're not in the club. It's just like any other skill set. You got to practice doing it. I learned to wrestle as an adult, and I'm still working on it, man. It's one of those skills, if you want to get good, you just never stop. Andrew has a question about sidekicks. He says, hey Ramsey, does it make sense to use the lead leg sidekick when your opponent cuts an angle to your left? I assume you're working from a orthodox stance. In a diagonal stance, it brings your feet in line with his body. Okay, you are in a orthodox stance. You want to use the lead leg sidekick. He's moving that way. Does it make sense? Well, it depends on how you're moving. I use the lead leg sidekick quite a bit in a number of different positions. I just filmed a video about sidekicks, not specifically about setting them up, more specifically addressing an idea that's commonly taught in traditional martial arts about striking with the blade of the foot as opposed to striking with the heel. And I do address lead leg sidekicks a bit in that, but in a diagonal stance, it brings your feet in line with his body. You mean like a side stance? Like a bladed stance, if you want to call it that? Yeah. You know, that really depends. That really depends. That's one of those very dynamic positions. We could talk about that all day, but that's one of those show, not tell sort of things. What's the best thing to do in mount? Start winning the fight right there. All right, we've got a super chat from Josh in Jesus who says, who wins, Ernie Shavers or Deontay Wilder? Oh, man. Okay. Boxing question. It's a tough one, man. I like both of those guys, to be honest. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know, man. Josh, I hope I'm not disappointing you with my answer. I don't know, man. I don't know. I would love to talk about some fight predictions today. There's a fight coming up I'm particularly interested in the outcome of. Coming up in the UFC this the end of this month. Chinese fighter Jingliang against, I can't even pronounce this dude's name, Khazmat Chimaev, I'm guessing. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but a lot of people are writing off Lee completely, saying, whatever, and lauding Hazmat as the next second coming of Khabib. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I see this fight as a lot more compelling than most people think. We'll see. Anything can happen in a fight. But, you know, I've had the opportunity to watch Li Jingliang come up in his career over the last 12 years. I've had the opportunity to spar with him. Who is Li? He's a Chinese fighter in the UFC. He's done pretty well in his previous fights in the UFC. He's a Jiu Jitsu black belt, excellent striker, and he's up against an opponent that people are putting up on a pedestal, and I'm not sure if it's merited because his fights have been very short, which is good, but we don't have a lot of film study. Anyway, Josh in Jesus has another question. Larry Holmes had the best chin ever. Do I agree? Let's talk about chins for a minute, because this is one of my personal pet peeves when people start talking about chins. Does that mean Larry Holmes took some epic shots and didn't go down? Does that mean he's a guy who absorbed a bunch of punishment? So what do people mean when they say chin? That means a guy takes a bunch of punishment and he doesn't get knocked out. That means he hasn't suffered sufficient brain damage yet to have an extremely adverse reaction to blunt force trauma yet. So, do I agree? I'm having a hard time bringing myself to agree or disagree with the word chin, because I kind of hate it when people bring up that term. He's got a great chin. That just simply means he's taken a lot of punishment but hasn't demonstrated the adverse effects yet. Can you teach martial arts if you don't compete? You can, yeah. If you are teaching a martial art that involves competition, if you're teaching a combat sport, it is really, really helpful to have competition experience. We talk about this a lot on this channel. Do I think it is worth it to do amateur fights just for fun despite the risk, says Ryan Macias. Sometimes. I've coached a lot of fighters who have done exactly that, done amateur fights. They had no intention of being professionals. They just wanted to have the experience. And it is a transformative experience to get into a fight, whether it's an MMA fight, a boxing match, a kickboxing match, to put yourself in an arena of full contact combat, hand to hand with another person to test your mettle. It is transformative, and it can have a lot of positive effects on your life, and there are risks, absolutely. Is it worth it? Yeah, that's up to you. Do we have any non-subjective questions? What are the main things in Jiu Jitsu that don't work in MMA? Oh, that's a good question. The Baco Wave asks. The main things in Jiu Jitsu that don't work in MMA. Well, let's take off the uniform right away. Everything in the gi simply won't work. Is it worth it to train in the gi? You can argue about that. I think the contrast is valuable, but for the most part, no. A lot of the strategies that are commonly taught in Jiu-Jitsu schools, and this is not a constant, this is not something you will always see, but a lot of the strategies. I made a video recently about fighting from a downed fighter versus a standing fighter position. And I stressed the 4 S's of that situation that I teach my students. Strike, stand up, sweep, submit, in that order. And one of my viewers who trains exclusively in Jiu-Jitsu said that's kind of weird because, you know, in Jiu-Jitsu competition, for me, it's kind of an opposite order. We work for submission, and if we can't get the submission, then we go for the sweep. Okay, that's all well and good in a Jiu-Jitsu competition where there is no threat of extreme damage and strikes with extreme prejudice from the guy on top who has an extreme advantage in that situation. Whereas in a jiu-jitsu match, it's more of a neutral position, right? If you are on the bottom facing a top fighter, we have to change our priorities. Striking, specifically up kicking, kicking the legs, kicking the head, kicking the body, is largely used to create distance so that we can stand up. Okay? And if we cannot stand up because the guy is trying to give us pressure, we create opportunities and spaces to sweep. We create imbalances. If we cannot sweep, we create opportunities to submit the guy. If we cannot do that, we repeat the process. Strike, stand up, sweep, submission. And whoa, we got some comments. Ooh, Grandmaster Jesse in the house, Mexican martial arts. Go check him out if you don't know this channel. It's one of the best things on the internet. I kid you not. Jesse wants to know, why couldn't God escape Jacob's grip? What kind of wrestling credentials did Jacob have? If you're not familiar with that story, Jacob from the Bible, later known as Israel, renamed by God after Jacob had an intense wrestling match with the Lord. Man, that's a great story in the Bible, one of my favorites. I made a video where I talk about this. It waxes on the spiritual side. It's kind of long. It's like an hour long if you're interested in some religious views and whatnot. But that is a fascinating story. We got a super chat. I'll get to that in just a minute. But that is such a fascinating story because a lot of religions teach like a non-corporeal God, and then you read that story about Jacob wrestling with the Lord, and sometimes it's understood that he's wrestling with an angel, but in either sense, he's wrestling with some celestial, non-earthly being. But they're actually physically wrestling. And it's not just allegorically struggling with his mind or his heart, although maybe we could interpret it that way. So it's a very strange and interesting story. Why couldn't he? Why? Because Jacob was apparently an awesome wrestler. We have a super chat from Black Omega who says, how do you reconcile fighting and being educated? Get educated about fighting. It's pretty simple. I know there are these stereotypes that if you go to a gym, if you work on physical attributes, if you are a fighter, then you're some sort of meathead, lunk, moron who just doesn't get it intellectually. And that's a bunch of nonsense because your body is your mind. There is a connection there. And if you are deficient in the physical department, if you do not understand how to use your body, you don't truly understand how to use your mind. There is a strong connection there. If you want to increase your overall intelligence, increase your kinesthetic bodily intelligence, one of the best ways to do that, practice martial arts. What else do we have? Is Sean O'Malley overrated? You know, in some ways, anybody who is put up on a pedestal is overrated. And so some people certainly do overrate Sean O'Malley. He's a human. Everybody's a human. This is one of the most important lessons that I learned from one of my most important coaches, a guy named Shane Brenner. I was getting ready for a fight. This was back in the U.S. And the fight fell through because I had an injury, but I was getting ready for a fight against this guy who was good and everybody knew him. And he was, he was a genuinely good fighter. And in my estimation, a better fighter than me. And I'm talking through my worries with my coach, and he's like, dude, everybody's a human. I know this guy. I've trained with this guy. He's good, but he's a human. Never forget that. Never, ever forget that. Edgar Castro wants to know. Oh, he's got a super chat. Thank you, my friend. I will be naming my self-defense course after you, coach. It is to honor you. All right, thanks, man. What's it going to be called? The Ramsey Dewey self-defense coach? Or self-defense system? That sounds kind of weird, especially considering the things I've said about self-defense on this channel. Maybe call it the Edgar Castro self-defense system, right? Take credit for what you do. That's what I would do. Josh and Jesus sends in another super chat. How would you coach Satan to fight Saint Michael? Okay. How would I coach Satan? Assuming I'm on Satan's side. If Satan shows up to my gym and he's like, hey, dude, coach me to fight Saint Michael. Man, I don't even know how to answer that. But it is an interesting moral conundrum. Like if some guy who is essentially the physical incarnation of the devil that you do not want to coach comes into your gym and he's like, hey, coach me, teach me, would you do it? Would you do it? Give Satan steroids? Satan would take steroids, wouldn't he? Reminds me of a video I did like 4 years ago titled, Would I Coach a Bully? Now, a human bully, that's a very different thing than the devil incarnate. But I've had a lot of dealings with some evil people in this world that I would want nothing to do with. And if they came to me and they were like, dude, help me impose my will on other people more efficiently, I would just straight up say, no, let's not go there. All right, what else do you have? Oh man, we got a billion questions. Satan would I poke? He would. He would break all the rules. Oh wow, we got a super chat from Vince Lowndes. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Vince says, do you think that Aikido or Japanese Jiu Jitsu has valuable but less visible techniques and tactics similar to Tai Chi? Well, there are some techniques in Aikido and some techniques in Tai Chi Chuan which are virtually identical. For example, Tai Chi has a lot of wrist locks, and it has a lot of arm manipulation techniques. And so some of those are virtually identical. As far as like hidden techniques, there really aren't hidden techniques in Tai Chi. There are techniques people simply don't know about because the overwhelming majority, like 99.9% of people who practice Tai Chi simply do forms. They practice a couple of the forms in slow motion in the park with their geriatric friends, and so that's all people really understand. If you train with one of the very few legitimate Tai Chi masters who knows how to fight, there are probably like 3 or 4 of them left alive on this planet. They'll teach you things like wrist locks and joint manipulation and throws and takedowns and basic grappling stuff. It's really not as complex as people like to make it seem. But does Aikido have techniques like that? Sure, absolutely. Ben wants to know, he sends in a super chat, hey coach, is Sunda technically a form of shoot boxing? Also, what are your thoughts on shoot boxing as a base before entering MMA? Well, shoot boxing, I've heard that defined a couple of different ways, but generally speaking, you strike and you go for takedowns and kind of stand back up, similar to Sunda. Sunda is kickboxing with takedowns. Once you get a takedown, you stand back up. There are a couple of very specific rules. You will only score for a takedown in Sunda if you remain standing while your opponent goes down. So is Sunda technically a form of shoot boxing? Well, it's a similar sport in those regards. Is it a good base for MMA? Yeah, absolutely, it is. It teaches you to strike, teaches you to do takedowns, teaches you to defend takedowns, gives you lots of practice in that arena. And yeah, it's definitely a good jumping off point for mixed martial arts. The overwhelming majority of Chinese mixed martial artists come from a Sunda background, and a lot of these guys are doing pretty well right now. Okay. What else do we have? I saw a question up here that looked interesting. Hey man, thanks Thomas, appreciate your kind words. When did I start my live stream? I don't know, like 10 minutes ago, maybe? Ah, Ved wants to know, Oi, coach, how do I counter conditioned karate hands? Blocking hurts. Hold on, we're missing the question. Oh man, where'd it go? My question feed is scrolling up too fast to read these. But this is an interesting one because I think I can relate to it. Where did it go? No. No. Did I lose that question? Okay, I lost the question, but I got the basic gist of it. This guy is training with some karate guys with some super conditioned hands. He's trying to block their punches, and the blocking hurts him. It hurts him a lot. And he's like, man, this is unusual. Oh, he resent it. Okay. How do I counter conditioned karate hands? Blocking hurts me more than them, even if I block well and they hit me more. Oh no, it's scrolling up again. Hit me more. The impossible question to answer. And if they hit anything soft, the strike goes right through me. How do I fix this weakness? Well, I know what you're talking about because there are some dudes who are just like really hard and bony and dense, and when they hit you, it hurts. And you know, some of these guys, some traditional martial artists spend an inordinate amount of time just becoming human weapons. And so for all their technical deficiencies, you know, they've got their striking points on point. So I know what you're talking about. You could approach that a couple of ways. You could try to become a hammer to match that hammer, or more specifically, instead of just trying to block and cover up and go bone against bone, focus on parrying, which is moving that stuff out of the way. We have Super Chat, and I think I missed it. Let's scroll back. Ah, yes, Josh in Jesus. Have you ever coached actors for fight scenes? Yes, I have. I have. I've coached a number of actors for fight scenes, actually. It's not my main thing, but somehow a number of actors and aspiring actors have come to me for help with fight choreography and preparation for films and so on. And that's been a lot of fun. Yeah. So I have. There's your answer. It's a short one. Yes. Yes, I have. I'd love to do more of it, but so far I've only worked with like three actors for fight scenes. But yeah. Jason wants to know, he thinks this might be an interesting question for a video. What do you do when you feel you have outgrown your current MMA gym? I've seen a number of people send in similar questions to that recently. When you feel like you're too cool for school. Well, not really. I'm sure you're not trying to be like egotistical or anything like I'm better than them, but you feel like you've outgrown your training partners. They're not helping you progress as much as you should, or as much as you feel you should. So what do you do about that? If you're the best guy in the room and you need people to push you to the next level, well, you can approach that a couple of different ways. You can either go and look for the next best thing, and you might want to give that a try, or you can try to lift your training partners up, or here's something else. You can try training differently, because there are a lot of ways to get better besides just going up against guys who are better than you. Because you do need three types of training partners: people you can squash, people at your level, and people who can squash you. And as far as the people you can squash, if you're in a gym where you can squash everybody and nobody's really teaching you anything, well, you got some options. One of which, and this is something very important, this is something Ricky Lundell said. He's one of my favorite coaches, you know, former world champion in grappling in a couple of organizations, and just phenomenal coach all around. And something he said that I took to heart and I've practiced a number of times: when you're the best guy in the room, roll with everybody until the white belts can beat you. Roll with everybody until the smallest, weakest, least experienced person in the room can beat you. Handicap yourself until people who couldn't ordinarily beat you when you are your best can beat you. Maybe I'll make a whole video about that. We'll see. We'll see. All right, what else do we have here? Super chat from Jason G. No question attached. Thank you. Appreciate the donation, my friend. How would Khabib do if he somehow came back to the UFC and got a rematch with Conor McGregor? Ooh. I would watch that fight. That would be fun. I think a lot of people would if Khabib would come back and rematch Conor McGregor. If for nothing else to see Conor McGregor get beat down again, because that's what I predict would happen. But again, fights are unpredictable. McGregor is talented, albeit coming off an injury, although he seems to be doing a fantastic job as far as rehabilitation goes. I've been following him on social media, and for all of his crazy antics and his outlandish character, he's setting a great precedent for injured fighters on the road to recovery. So that is a positive thing that's coming out of Conor. Vince Lowndes wants to know, how would you coach someone against Khabib? How would I coach someone against Khabib? Man, probably the best thing, just get a room full of dudes from that part of the world. I've trained with a lot of Slavic fighters, a lot of dudes from, Slavic's the wrong word, a lot of folks from former Soviet countries, from Russia, from all those countries ending in Stan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. I'm blanking on all the, Uzbekistan. Yeah, all those former Soviet countries, and they all have something in common, which is they all know how to fight. They all know how to wrestle. Like the average combat sports athlete from that region is just levels above, and levels different. Not just above, but different. They're just different. They've got a different intensity than a lot of other people, than people in the West. And it's not like in the gym they go hard and just smash and kill each other. There's a work ethic. This is something that is difficult to explain. Fedor Emelianenko wrote a book, and it's a pretty standard technique book. Here's how to punch, here's how to kick, here's how to do arm bars and takedowns and guard passes. Like, nothing really surprising there, but the forward of the book is very telling about the mentality of athletes from this part of the world. He said, I can teach you the techniques that I use to win fights, and I will show you them in this book, but I cannot teach you the Russian work ethic, because that is why I won the fights. It is not the technique, it is the work ethic. And when I coached these guys from this part of the world, from these Russian-speaking countries, these former Soviet republics, when their friends are standing by the sidelines, when their teammates are standing by the sidelines, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but the one thing they repeat to their teammate who is fighting over and over again, robota, 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 which again, I'm probably mispronouncing, but rough translation, work, 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 right? If you want to beat a guy like that, you have to outwork him. You're not going to out-technique him, you have to outwork him. And that is a work ethic you have to internalize. You have to absolutely internalize. If you find yourself getting tired, you have to tell yourself, so what? So what? It doesn't matter. Just work. Work until the work is done. Man, that is the only thing that's going to save you in a situation like that. Anyway, Jason G sends in a super chat. We got a couple of these. He says, hey, coach, I want to know your thoughts on training with very poor vision. Got that. Half blind, man. I can't get contacts for a while, and I'm stuck with glasses. Have you trained any fighters with poor vision? Sure, but I'm probably the fighter with the worst vision. Like I said, I lost the sight, most of the sight in one eye after my last fight. I'm also extremely myopic. Everything outside of an arm's reach is a blur. And what that taught me is that you can't rely on your eyes. I can't rely on my eyes in a fight. And that's fine, because we don't see details in a fight anyway. We see motion blurs. What we need to focus on as far as vision is the peripherals. The peripherals, not what's directly in front of you. So as far as striking goes, I'm not saying strike blindfold like that Van Damme movie where he's like practicing blocking punches with a blindfold. What was that, Bloodsport, in the training montage? I'm saying focus on your peripherals, meaning when you watch your opponent, don't stare at their eyes unless you're trying to lie to them and fake them out. Watch the body, watch the torso from the head to the shoulders, and you will see through your peripherals where your opponent starts to move before they move. If you focus on the details, you're looking at the wrong thing. You don't have time for that in a fight. Focus on the peripherals. That is where we see motion, right? So, yeah, take off the glasses, especially if it's a grappling art. If it's a grappling art, you don't need your eyes at all. You can do it blindfolded, and you should. You absolutely should practice fighting blind as far as grappling goes. Give that a try. We have another super chat from Killer Bead01. Any advice on when to use the turtle guard for BJJ? All the time, whenever the heck you feel like it. And if you're not comfortable using a turtle position in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, get comfortable with it, because there are a ton of offensive options from there. In fact, I, in many ways, prefer the turtle position over the closed guard or any other guard system any day of the week, because it forces you into an offensive game. You can't play a defensive turtle game. You have to play an offensive game. And don't think of it as a position where you just turtle up and wait. If you're waiting there, you're playing it wrong. It is a position where you will be in for that long, and then you move. You will sit out. You will Granby. You will roll into a knee bar. You will attack from that position. It is an attack position. So think of it that way. When should you play it? Once again, whenever you want. Oh, wow. Sanjay the Curry says in a super chat, thank you very much. He says, Ramsey, I clogged my toilet. What should I do? Start with a plunger. Test that out. See if the plunger will push that clog down. If that doesn't work, you have a couple of other at-home options before you have to call the plumber. There are some products you can buy at the store relatively cheaply. You can stick in the toilet, and maybe that will dissolve the clog. If not, call your local plumber as opposed to your local MMA coach, and he might have some better solutions for you. Vince Lowndes sends another super chat. Could Prime Rickson Gracie out-grapple Khabib? Ooh. That would be interesting. Oh, I missed Josh in Jesus' additional super chat. Oh man, let me scroll up here. So many super chats. Ah, Josh. I'll get back to that other one in a minute. Josh says, advice for hardening bones after 40. Yeah, stay active after 40. Keep lifting after 40. I'm 43 years old right now. And a lot of folks, when they end up getting older, they just stop being physically active. Don't ever stop being physically active as long as you are able to. Man, I'm really enjoying watching, following Stefan Kesting right now. He just had a hip replacement. If you're not familiar, he's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's got a couple of channels about Brazilian jiu-jitsu, grappling arts, self-defense, stuff like that. Great guy. He's an older gentleman. And he is, I shouldn't say he's not that much older than me, to be honest. But, you know, he's not a young man anymore. He had a hip replacement, but he's doing an awesome job of rehab and prehab. Man, staying physically active in order to diminish the possibility of turning into a cripple, basically. So stay active, man. Stay active. Keep lifting, keep moving, oh yeah, nutrition too, obviously, man. Eat some cruciferous vegetables. That'll never hurt. Unless you have an allergy. Then it will. All right, we have more super chats. We got the turtle guard, the clogged toilet. All right, this interesting question from Vince. Vince, I didn't forget you. Could Prime Rickson Gracie out-grapple Khabib? Man, Prime Rickson Gracie was awesome. He was athletic. He was a great fighter, and he fought under a different rule set, to be honest. Prime Rickson was fighting under Vale Tudo rules, and something Rickson did in his early matches to win a lot was take the back and club people in the back of the head with the elbows. Could Prime Ixon take Khabib's back? I don't know, to be honest. Is Ixon one of those guys that really was that good, or are we remembering him fondly through rose-colored glasses because the competition wasn't necessarily as steep back then? I don't know, man. I would really have to go back and do some serious film studies, but then again, we never saw Ixon fight a guy like Khabib. We never saw it. So I don't know. I don't know, but my initial impression is probably not, because Khabib just had a much more aggressive grappling game plan, man, and I don't think Ixon's grappling in his prime matched up very well with that, to be honest. Preach. All right, allow me to preach, my friend. How do I defend against a dangerous man in a wheelchair? Run away, man. Run away, because he probably can't run after you unless he's got like turbo jets on that wheelchair, in which case run faster. Is there a point of diminishing returns? Misfit 138 wants to know. In training martial arts, yeah, where the benefits of training becomes too taxing on the body. Thanks for all that you do and the knowledge that you share. I had a comment from one of my viewers on a recent video about this topic, about the point of diminishing returns. Okay, you could, let's say you only train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, nothing else, right? But you want to be the best mixed martial artist in the world, so you're going to be deficient in all the striking and stand-up and everything else that isn't Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's going to be a point, or maybe you get to that black belt level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and training to win the ADCC is not going to give you the type of returns that you want for that pursuit of being the best mixed martial artist in the world, right? At that point, you really need to start spending your time elsewhere. Whoa, it's the story of Royce Gracie, kinda, yeah. We had a guy like Royce who got really, really good at jiu-jitsu and not really any good at anything else. And then when he started fighting more well-rounded fighters, it didn't go so well. Is it easy to knock out someone? If they're standing perfectly still and allowing you to strike them, it's not that hard. If you sneak up on someone and they don't know you're about to get hit, it's not that hard. If you're fighting someone who is intelligently defending themselves, that's where the difficulty lies. Getting past the guard, getting past the hands, making the right angle, right? Because somebody who is intelligently defending themselves is going to stop you from knocking them out. Yeah, that goes without saying. So is it hard? It depends on how good the other guy is at defending himself. What strategy would I give a shorter, skinnier guy to beat a taller, more muscular guy in a boxing match? Get more muscular. But aside from that, get better at boxing. Improve your technique. But Ramsey, I wanted a magical answer. I wanted to just put your feet right here. Just put your feet right there. No, man. You're probably asking me this because you're thinking about that one guy in the gym who's taller and more muscular than you, and he always has your number, and he's always beating you. Well, but if you're generally speaking about fighting bigger, taller people, spar with a lot of bigger, taller people because they're all different. Super chat from IB Rippin M, who says, farting during a submission makes dudes wanna tap. You know, this happened to me for the first time in my life. About 2 weeks ago, I was rolling with a friend of mine, and I was feeling kind of weird in the guts that day, and I exerted my abdominal muscles a little too much in this transition. I was going for the Kimura. I'm on top of him, and it came out, and he kind of groaned like, "Oh, dude, come on, man." And yeah. But a loud noise or a scream is a verbal tap, so it counts. Those are the IBJJF rules. I didn't make them up. Okay. Uh, the farting Gamora, what a finisher. Yes, indeed. Man, yes, indeed. Have I seen Dr. Mike's boxing video? He might be the next boxing YouTuber. He's actually a decent boxer. I haven't. I'm not sure who Dr. Mike is. Is it Dr. Mike Israel, the strength training dude? There are a lot of Dr. Mikes out there on the internet, so I haven't seen it. Send me a link. Might be interesting to check that out. How do you spar with the new guys? Edward Monero, longtime subscriber, wants to know this. How do you spar with the new guys? I did once and wasn't satisfied with how I handled it. How do I help them to understand the sport on their first few sessions? Go really light. Play with them. Play with them. There are different ways to spar. When I started sparring, when I started training back in the United States, it was kill, 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 and it's a terrible way to spar. It's awful. Don't do it. And a number of years later, I started training with a dude from Thailand, former Lumpini Boxing Stadium champion, awesome dude. And he says, let's play in the ring. Those were his words, not let's spar in the ring, but let's play in the ring. And true to his word, he's just playing with me. He's going through all the positions. He's fast, he's technical, but he's just touching the skin, just touching the skin, no power. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I'm learning a lot here, and I'm not getting injured. So train like that. If you can't, if you don't have that level of control, practice with a heavy bag until you can just tap it with zero power, right? Train with the new guys like you were training with a small child, as if you were training with your 9-year-old daughter and you don't want to hurt her, even if it's a grown man, right? Get to the technical level where you were able to do that, where you are able to do that with someone who is trying to kill you, and you are still able to move around them and take care of them and not injure them while not getting injured yourself. Because new guys will try to murder you. They absolutely will. Coach the Thai drill. JP, I've seen him post this like every time I make a video. Coach, post the Thai drill video. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, because the Thais do a lot of different drills. So which one are we talking about? Do I think Thorson, you mean Thor Bjornsson, could take on an actual bear if he wanted? 500 pounds of muscle is a lot of muscle. It is a lot of muscle, and there are different types of bears, so this depends on what type of bear we're talking about. Is it a grizzly bear, particularly an angry grizzly bear that wants to kill you? In which case, no. That grizzly bear is going to kill even a 500-pound muscle man, most likely. Is it a small baby brown bear or black bear? In which case, there's a much better likelihood of that fight playing out. Is it a polar bear? No, polar bear is going to kill you. Alexis Rodriguez sends in a question, sends in a super chat. Can you make a video on how to properly drill? John Danaher spoke on a podcast that drilling for repetition is useless and doesn't improve your skills. I have made a video about this, but I have been thinking about making an updated video about this, showing different drills and different techniques. I think the video is titled something like "Drilling Doesn't Mean What You Think It Means," and I know what you're talking about. John Danaher did a number of interviews, most recently on Lex Friedman's podcast, where Lex was saying something like, I love drilling. Drilling is great. You get lots of reps, and it's good for me. And John Danaher kind of cut him off like, drilling is garbage. And he elaborated on that. By drilling, most people mean what I call sequencing. Sequencing, in my vocabulary, and the lexicon is very important here. Sequencing is doing a movement with a cooperating partner so that you can learn to do the movement. You don't know the technique, so you sequence it. Here's how you do an arm bar. Put your arms here, put your hips here, move your body this way. There's the arm bar. Now rep it out 100 times until you know the move. Something like that. That's a sequence. And that's level one. That's not a drill in my book, but that's what most jiu-jitsu guys call a drill. Right? A drill involves an element of resistance and a very specific goal, and generally it's very short, like 10 seconds, 30 seconds long. So sequencing is the first level. Then we have drilling, which some people might call positional sparring, and that's fine if you want to call it that. But you have a very specific goal, and you have a very specific time limit, and there is a specific type of resistance, right? And there are gradations of drills, from easy to more difficult, and so on. And then there's actual sparring. But the problem with most jiu-jitsu classes is they do sequencing, and then they do sparring, and they don't actually drill. They don't do what I call drilling. And if you listen to John Danaher, what he describes, what athletes should do is what I call drilling, not sequencing. So maybe I should just join the rest of the world and to avoid confusion, just start calling sequencing drilling and start calling what I call drilling something else. But yeah, I'm definitely going to revisit that topic and make another video about it because it's definitely worth talking about. Some guy sends in another super chat. He says, "Hey Ramsey, could you do a video about passing the guard and maintaining mount? I have made a couple of videos about maintaining mount. You should definitely check those out. And I have made a few videos about passing the guard, but the guard is a complex topic. Passing the guard is a complex topic, specifically because there are many different types of guards. There are thousands of different ways to pass those multiple guards, and so that would be a long, ongoing series of videos about passing multiple types of guards. There are thousands of great videos on the internet about this topic. I would be happy to throw my name into the hat as well and give you my take on it. Maybe you would glean some information that you missed from some other channels. But yeah, I'll give you some more guard passing videos. Why not? Why not? It's a worthy topic. KillerBeat01 sends in a super chat. Charlie Z walks into your gym. What do you do? Man, I'm wondering how he got into China in the first place. I would ask him some questions. Man, I would do a podcast with Charlie Z. I would want to sit him down and do a podcast with him. That's what I would want to do. I would want to pick his brain, find out how Charlie Z's brain works, right? Because we've seen the character, we've seen the persona, we've seen a bit of the person, we've seen the crazy gym fights, but I would pick the dude's brain. I want to know what's going on in there. And I'm sure you do too, man. The internet would probably go nuts over that. Max wants to know, how can I finish the straight ankle lock? I got in position, but I couldn't finish it. Now, there are a couple of ways. A lot of times, people will call the Achilles lock a straight ankle lock because it looks very similar. And the Achilles lock is one of my favorite submissions of all time. And I would strongly recommend watch Dean Lister's videos on that topic, on finishing the Achilles lock, which he might have labeled as the straight ankle lock. The straight ankle lock itself, if we're being honest about that term and separating it from the Achilles lock, is a slightly different technique where the ankle is being twisted as opposed to a compression lock on the, or what do you call it, on the Achilles tendon. Maybe I'll make a video about this topic because again, it's one of my favorite submissions. I use it constantly, and all the white belts at my gym in the jiu-jitsu class fear me because of the straight ankle lock specifically. It's legal at the white belt level. Nothing wrong with foot locking the white belts if you're following the rules. Joe Anderson sends in a super chat. Master Wong versus Master Ken. Nut grab versus nut stomp. I would love it, and I would absolutely love it if Master Ken would chime on this and put Master Wong in his place and say exactly what he says about every other martial art. You know what I mean. I'm going to give the nod to Master Ken in this situation. He's just a much more interesting character in the book. Would I do a podcast with Master Wong if given the opportunity? Absolutely. So if any of you have a contact with Master Wong, put him in touch with me and we will do a podcast. I would love to do that. That would be fantastic. Master Wong, Ramsey Dewey, podcast. Oh man, the internet might blow up. Nobody would care. You would care. I would care. Maybe it would blow up. I don't know. When I made that first video about Master Wong and his rear naked choke and how he made like a dozen videos where, he's just making some really fundamental mistakes and so on, I thought nobody would watch that. I thought maybe a couple hundred people would watch this. Nobody would really care, but man, that thing blew up and got 1.5 million views pretty quickly. So I don't know. Maybe people would like to see a podcast with Master Wong. That would be fun. That would be interesting. Did I ever watch any of the Pink Man's videos? I did, and I wish he would still make videos. Those were fun. Whatever happened to that guy? Ramsey, silly question. Do you think a pro wrestler could defeat a boxer in an MMA fight? Depends on which pro wrestler. A lot of pro wrestlers are legitimate wrestlers. And yeah, the ones that are, absolutely. Absolutely. The Quantum Samurai sends in a super chat. Can I dunk a 10-foot goal? Can I dunk a 10-foot goal? Are we talking about basketball or soccer or American football? Because if it's basketball, like dunking, right? We say dunk in regard to jumping up and slamming that ball into the hoop. But we don't usually call that a goal. We just call it the hoop. Can I dunk a ball in a 10-foot hoop? I don't know. I've never actually tried. I imagine if I practiced enough, I could. I remember when I was a teenager, I was probably like 14 years old, 15, something like that. I was the same height today, 6'1", 185 centimeters tall. And I ended up on a playground somewhere, and there I was playing basketball with this really tall dude, these adults, like twice my age. I was playing basketball with them. And this really short dude, with a red beard. And the short dude kept running up trying to dunk the basketball, but he was just too short. And when the basketball came to me, I just tried a free throw every time. Just tried to sink a three-pointer or whatever. I'm not a great basketball player, haven't spent a whole lot of time playing it, but the little short dude got mad at me. And he started saying, "Dunk it, man! You have the height! Just dunk it!" And I could see the frustration in his eyes. He was like, "What I would give to be over 6 feet tall. If I had your height, I would be amazing at that." And man, I could see it was just hurting him. It was hurting his sensibilities. Do I watch arm wrestling? No, never have. Never watched it. What do I think about hydration powders? That doesn't really make sense to me because hydration means you put water in your system, and powder is kind of the opposite of water. Now, as far as, I see, hydration powders with electrolytes and cane sugar, is that good after a weight cut? Well, you do need to replenish electrolytes because when you sweat, you lose salt, which is dissolved salt in your system, so you got to replace that. So yeah, it's not the worst thing you could do. Super chat from RRTNZ. Is that your password or something? Anyway, RRTNZ says, "Cheers, dude. Love your content and humility that you always try to give a balanced view, especially between the traditional arts and mixed martial arts, fight, sports." Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, what else do we have? Are there any legitimate Chinese martial arts YouTube channels that you would recommend? I don't know. Don't know. Haven't seen any. I haven't gone out of my way to look for them either. So I don't know. What do I think about mixing high school wrestling with BJJ? Great combination. Do it. Whenever possible, find that beautiful fusion between wrestling and Jiu Jitsu, and it makes a much, much better grappling art than either of the two separately. Akabur says, I hurt my wrist while punching a heavy bag. I have ligament damage in my ulnar area. Now, how can I fix it? Well, speak to a medical professional about the damage, but as far as what to do after you have an injury, rehab, man. Strengthen your wrists. Strengthen your wrists. When you throw a punch, we want to lock our wrist into a specific position so it doesn't bend or twist upon impact, right? That's why people wear wraps. It's not just to put padding over the knuckles. It's specifically to lock your wrist into a straight position, into this ergonomically correct position, so the knuckles, the metacarpals are aligned with the wrist, and so we have that nice little power line, so all of the impact goes into the strong bones of the arm, down into your feet, etc., right? So I would recommend some simple wrist strengthening exercises after you get that checked out and taken care of by a medical professional. Simple things like wrist curls, hold a small weight, do this sort of thing, do that sort of thing, wrist circles, or grabbing and squeezing things. You can get a couple of different mechanisms. Like they have these rubber bands, you can put them on your fingers and stretch them open like that. That can be helpful. Or like a rubber ball, you can squeeze. That can be helpful. Things often sold as grip strengthening exercises can also be very helpful to strengthen your wrists, right? And when you can tolerate them, knuckle push-ups are excellent for wrist strength and teaching bone alignment in the wrist. So best of luck in your recovery, my friend. Sorry that happened to you. Make sure to wrap up those wrists and focus on bone alignment next time you hit the heavy bag. Alexander Lako says, Jean-Claude Van Damme versus Steven Seagal, both men in their primes. Who wins? Interesting question. Man, that's a fight everybody wanted to see in the 90s. And I remember Steven Seagal did this interview, this kind of infamous interview where he was asked about other famous martial arts movie stars, and every time a name was suggested, he kind of scoffed. Can I laugh in your face? He said at the interviewer. Specifically when they named Van Damme, he was like, Van Damme, can I laugh in your face? Like, he sucks, he's not nearly as awesome as me. And so, specifically because of that attitude, I would love to see an alternate universe where these two fought back in their prime, back in the 90s, and I would love to see Jean-Claude Van Damme shut his little mouth. But I don't know. Seagal was, if I think he was substantially larger, heavier than Jean-Claude Van Damme, but I would go with Van Damme, just because that's what I would want to happen. Metatron says, love your content. Thank you, man. What's your opinion on Kyokushin rules, like no punches to the face rule? Should they change that? Will they ever? Thanks. You know, there are so many other combat sports that allow punches to the face. Boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Sunda, Guan Gyokdo, Savat, mixed martial arts, shoot boxing, you name it. There are a million ways to compete with face punches. Does Kyokushin need to add face punches? No, I mean, I think it's fine the way it is. And I enjoy Kyokushin. I've competed in the sport. I hold an honorary black belt in Kyokushin karate. I never formally studied it. That's kind of a strange story about how I was awarded an honorary black belt, but I have competed. I have competed at a national level in Kyokushin here in China. I got an invitation to a national tournament here, and that was a lot of fun. I didn't win, but it was a great learning experience, and I enjoyed the contrast. I really enjoyed the contrast of being able to focus on the other aspects of karate, the other aspects of striking, and even takedowns without the punches to the face. And, you know, I have extensive experience in Taekwondo competition, and it's similar, but importantly different to Kyokushin. One, you have the chest protector, you've got more protective equipment on, but also the leg kicks. The leg kicks are a really substantially important thing. So one thing I do in the kickboxing classes that I teach, the striking classes, I do these kind of pentathlons of sparring sometimes, where we will spar under different rule sets. And one of those rule sets that I will always include is Kyokushin, because it's such an interesting contrast that can teach you some really important things about striking and setups and get your mind moving in different ways than you would otherwise do with, you know, just kickboxing or Muay Thai rules. So thank you so much for your question. Maybe I'll make a video about that one day. We'll see. I saw a couple of other interesting questions while I was answering that. Bare hand MMA with a gi, imagine. Yeah, like the original UFC, that would be interesting. MMA and a gi is it's different. It's different. I made a video with a Ukrainian friend of mine who had some Sambo experience, probably about 4 years ago, where we did MMA sparring, but with the gi on, and it was different. It wasn't what I thought it would be. It was the first time I did MMA sparring with the gi on, and I thought that, you know, all the gi, Jiu Jitsu grips and chokes and stuff would play a much, much bigger role than they did. Instead, the gi changed the striking aspect of MMA like a whole lot more. Like a whole lot more than I thought it would. You've got a reach advantage, for example. That collar grip gives you this extreme advantage. Like you can hold a guy, stiff arm him, and just tee off with your straight right. But on the ground also, there are a lot of ways to immobilize the guy with the gi and to control him for strikes, right? We always think about immobilizing and controlling the guy for submissions and position in Jiu-Jitsu, but we never really think about this for strikes. I'm planning on doing a video about combat sambo in the near future, and comparing and contrasting that with doing MMA and the gi, and we'll see how that goes. So, yeah, that's a great question. I love sparring with contrast, like I said to our friend Metatron. Speaking of Metatron, he's back. He says, so true. Also, Kyokushin people kick the face from really close range because they can't use punches to the face. Thanks for your answer. Man, that's a great point. Man, that's something that was really hammered home when I was sparring with my friend Jawad Mahmoudi. He is one of the best strikers I have ever trained with in my life. His little brother fights in 1FC, and Jawad is just a fantastic striker, great person to learn with. And I put up some of these sparring videos on my YouTube channel. And what was so interesting about sparring with him is how many head kicks he landed. Like I went my entire Taekwondo competition career without ever anyone landing a head kick on me. And that's like a head kicking sport, man. I was pretty proud about that. And within 1 minute of the first round, Jawad lands like 6 head kicks on me. He's pulling the kicks, fortunately, otherwise I would have been dead. But he has a Kyokushin background. And I think, you know, he hasn't said this, but I think it's specifically because of that he's become so good at setting up those head kicks from very close range. And I've learned a lot about setting up those head kicks from close range in ways where you don't necessarily see it coming. Like he calls it the ghost kick, for example. Some really, really cool stuff that you can learn from the contrast, like I said. All right, what else do we have? I'm a short person. I'm 5'3". I will try combat sambo. Any advice? Have fun and learn everything you can. Sambo is an awesome sport. I've trained with a ton of sambo fighters over the years. There are so many people here in China who come from Russia and these former Soviet countries where sambo is very common. So it's been a great learning opportunity to train with these guys. And like I said before, when I was talking about the Russian work ethic, the work ethic that these guys bring is contagious. The work ethic is contagious, and I love it. So, man, learn everything you can and have fun. If you miss the fun, man, you miss everything. How much would it take to see me fight in the UFC? I don't think that's going to happen. These last few weeks, I've been going to the UFC Performance Institute here in Shanghai. I was going to go this morning, but I'm doing a Q&A with you guys instead because I had some stomach issues. So I skipped out on that this morning. But it's been really, it's fun. It's a lot of fun training with these fighters and helping them prep for these fights and sparring with them. It's a lot of fun, but it's also very elucidating that these guys are half my age. They are full-time fighters, and they're laser sharp focused on getting into the UFC, top performance, winning fights in the UFC. Some of these guys are getting ready for the Contender Series that Dana White's doing right now, and yeah, these are good fighters. These are good fighters. I'm 43 years old. If the UFC came along and offered me a contract with a bunch of money behind it, sure, I would absolutely take that fight. That would be interesting. That would be fascinating. But I don't think that's going to happen, my friends. In the meantime, I understand my role as a coach, helping fighters to prepare to win fights. It's a very different thing. Question from Milad says, can I train BJJ with retinal detachment? I did scleral buckle surgery. I don't know what that surgery is. And I don't know what the ramifications of that are. I don't know if some sort of trauma would make it worse. Can you train BJJ without being able to see? Yes, absolutely. You absolutely can. You can do it blind, and you should definitely practice it that way. But will the actual Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training and sparring and competition make your eye situation worse? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe consult a medical professional about that. Do I still play video games? Mostly with my children. We play games together every once in a while. We have fun. What other questions do you have? Ooh, interesting. Jason sends in this question. Coach Ramsey, what if Olympic throws, I assume you mean like Olympic judo style throws, like the big high amplitude throws, and backs to the mat, scored 4 points in grappling, how would things look? I assume you mean like BJJF style competition where they have a scoring criteria. Currently, takedowns score 2 points under IBJJF rules. But what if they scored 4 points? Oh man, that would be interesting. I would love to see that happen, just to see how it changes the way people train. I think the guard pullers would pull guard extra super fast, and the wrestlers would try extra super hard to get that takedown. I think the only way that really works, though, because again, it would just encourage the guard pullers to pull guard even faster. The only way that really works is to penalize guard pulling. And maybe instead of adding extra points to takedowns, just penalize guard pulling. And I know people hate that because they're like, but that's my whole game, and I don't want to invest time in the takedown game, and takedowns are too dangerous, or whatever people say to avoid takedowns. But I would love to see a jiu-jitsu competition that puts an extra emphasis on takedowns as opposed to guard pulling. When the IBJJF changed the rules for white belts and said white belts can no longer jump guard. You can pull guard, you can sit down with a hold of the other guy's lapels or sleeve and then pull guard from the ground, but you can't jump into guard anymore, which was very wise because that's where most of the injuries in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu come from. People don't know this. It's not from the dreaded heel hooks, which are super illegal. It's from pulling guard. It's from jumping guard. Snaps people's knees, man. But I would love to see what would happen. What happened with the white belts, and this was super interesting, when they banned jumping guard, is that they started wrestling more. They started fighting for the takedown more. And when I started watching these jiu-jitsu tournaments, the white belt divisions started becoming much more interesting than the colored belt divisions, and even some of the black belt divisions. Why? Because they were more action-packed. They were more aggressive. There was more... They focused on the top game. It looked more like a fight, to be honest. Man, if you're not familiar with the rules of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you don't understand Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, and you go to a Jiu-Jitsu tournament for the first time and you see these guys just sitting down on the ground and sitting up and doing this stuff that doesn't look like a fight at all, you can be very confused. And so, taking your non-Jiu-Jitsu friend to watch a Jiu-Jitsu tournament might really turn them off of the sport initially. So again, I would love, as an experiment, just to see what would happen if you tweaked the rules just a little bit. Okay, what else do we have? What do I think about CJJ? I don't know what CJJ is. What is CJJ? Is that a type of jiu-jitsu? Huh. Alexander Lako says, Ramsey, make a video on the word of wisdom and what it means to you if you haven't already. If you're not familiar, that's a religious term in the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which I am a member. If you didn't know that, surprise! Yeah. What that means, it's kind of a health code, if you will, to abstain from the following: alcohol, tobacco, coffee, tea, and harmful drugs. Pretty straightforward, right? And a lot of people throw their arms up in the air. What? Coffee? Tea? Well, I understand tobacco. I understand why you wouldn't drink alcohol, but tea, coffee? Yeah, that's part of the code too. Have I made a video about it? Not really. Yes, abstaining from tea. This shocks a lot of people, especially here in China, since tea, everybody drinks tea in China. You ever heard the expression, not for all the tea in China? There's a lot of tea in China, a whole lot of tea in China. And so Chinese people are often taken aback, almost always taken aback at the fact that I don't drink tea. No caffeine at all. Well, I don't drink caffeine. The word of wisdom, my religion does not proscribe caffeine. It doesn't say no caffeine, right? I don't use caffeine because I don't want to. It doesn't do you one lick of good, and it does you a lot of bad. But it is not the caffeine that is proscribed by the religion. It is the coffee and the tea. Chocolate, no, chocolate does not factor into the word of wisdom. Okay. But at the same time, do I spend my days gorging myself with chocolate? No! Because I'm an athlete, that's why. What traditional martial art would look good in pro wrestling? Huh. Pro wrestling is all about appearance, right? It's all about looking cool. So, that's a good question. See, a lot of traditional martial arts are based on striking styles, and striking technically is illegal in pro wrestling, but they do it all the time, so I've seen pro wrestlers doing straight up sidekicks at each other. So who's to say? Who's to say? Whatever looks cool. In a great twist of irony, the Vietnamese martial art Vo Vi Nam was actually inspired by pro wrestling. The guy who invented Vo Vi Nam, I think it dates all the way back to the 90s, if I'm being generous. It's not an ancient martial art. But the dude who devised the martial art Vo Vi Nam, he was this Vietnamese dude who loved pro wrestling, especially the Huracan Rana and the Frankensteiner. If you're not familiar with those, that's where you jump up, you grab the guy around the neck with leg scissors, and then you flip around, do this flippy-dippy roll, and throw the dude on the floor. If you watch the Marvel movies, it's like Black Widow's signature throw, where she jumps up in there and does this flippy-dippy spin. That's the Huracan Rana, right? And it's a very common technique you see when female pro wrestlers compete, because it looks incredibly cool, and it's super easy to do if you know how to do it, because it's a worked move. It's a 100% worked move. It's not a legitimate move. It's not like a flying armbar where it looks cool and it is real. It's a worked move. So generally you see a smaller person do this move against a bigger person. And it's so funny that I say it's a worked move, because Vo Vi Nam presents itself as a legitimate martial art, and then they use this totally worked, scripted pro wrestling technique as their signature move, so it doesn't make any sense there. It's like karate plus a fake pro wrestling move, basically. But anyway, the Huracan Rana is super easy to do if you know how. What are my favorite flashy moves for combat sports? Back arch suplexes are always a thing of beauty. Are those flashy moves? Like, what does flashy mean? I see a lot of people use the word flashy. And a suplex is an extremely practical technique. A lot of people say flashy to mean impractical. Some people use it to mean it looks pretty or it looks cool. So I assume you're meaning it looks cool. The Imanari roll, that's a fun move. It's very practical. I love it. I use it a lot. Fairly high percentage move for me, and it looks awesome. The suplex, yes, I love it. It's a great technique. I use it. Is it practical? Yes. Does it look awesome? Yes. What else? The flying armbar, that's a fun move. And there are a number of different ways to do it. Higher risk versions, lower risk versions. But that's a fun one. Among Us keeps asking this question over and over again. Hey Ramsey, what is your opinion on the way the CCP is handling the Uyghur Muslims in China? You want to wax political? Let's wax political for a moment. You don't know what's happening in China. I don't know what's happening in China. There's a lot of information being spouted out, a lot of talking points being repeated, and the honest answer is, you don't know. You don't know what the hell is going on, man. If you want to listen to a channel that addresses this topic in detail and has some very well-researched information on the topic, I would recommend go check out Daniel Dumbrill on this issue. And that's about all I'm going to say about this topic. Lao Y86. No, that dude doesn't even live in China. That dude's a clown. I'm just going to straight up say that. That dude is a clown. All right. Why is your Chinese still so bad even though you've been living there for years? Because I don't practice Chinese enough. That's why. Here's the thing. When you practice something, you get better at it. When you don't practice something, you don't get better at it. Why is my Chinese not better than it is? Practice, or the lack thereof. Can I train at the moment? Yes, you have COVID restrictions there. That's unfortunate. So what happened with COVID and China back in 2019? Everything in China closed down for about 3 months. Everything. Literally everything. Borders, travel, stores, businesses, everything shut down 100% for 3 months, and then everything opened up and has been open ever since. Well, except for international borders, there is some travel in and out of China with special regulations governing that. But yeah, man, as far as inside of China, it's pretty much business as usual, with a few exceptions. I did try to order a package from Harbin, that's way up north in China, and I was talking to the dude online. He said, I'm sorry, we can't ship it out because there are some COVID restrictions here. So apparently nothing's getting out of Harbin right now. I'm not sure what the situation is up there. But as far as here in Shanghai and most of the country, not too many restrictions from COVID. Have I read anything on Stoicism? Not much. I've read the Wikipedia article about Stoicism. Juan Diablo 666 says, I think that philosophy has a lot in common with your way of seeing life. Well, all philosophy is, I mean, let's look that word up right now. Let's look up philosophy. Let's look up the definition. Because this is a word a lot of people use wrong, and we need to fix that. Philosophy. Definition. Let's read that together. Philosophy. The study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence, especially when considered as an academic discipline. So, a lot of times I'll make a video and I will talk about my feelings or my thoughts, and people will be like, oh, your philosophies are so wonderful. And philosophy is something a little bit different, or a whole lot different than just feelings and thoughts. It is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge and reality. So if you're just shooting the breeze, that's not philosophy. Philosophy is study. Anyway, so am I an expert on Stoicism? Nah. Do I know what it means? More or less. And that's about it. An interview with Chadi and Shintaro Higashi would be epic. That would be interesting. I'm down if they are. Why not? If you're not familiar with those guys, they've got some great channels on judo here on YouTube. Go check them out. All right, what other questions do we have? Ooh, super chat from Jason G. Have I ever played Halo? I have. I've played Halo before. It's okay. I'm not really into first-person shooters. It's not my favorite style of video game, but yeah, it's okay. The last time I played Halo, I got together with a bunch of guys my age, and we were, one of them was like a Boy Scout troop leader, and he had his scout troop over, and they were doing like this scout activity where it was like the old guys playing Halo against the Boy Scouts. And these teenage kids kicked our butts so badly. They were organized. They were like a well-oiled machine. And we were doing like a local connection. The old guys were in one room on one TV, and the young guys were in the other room, and we could hear them. It was like military strategy, like flank left, flank right, do this, do that. And they just annihilated us instantly. I was like, man, I had no idea that children could be that good at video games. Video game strategy, man, it's like they're preparing these kids for war or something with these types of games. Interesting. Any idea for those with fragile confidence, my friend? Confidence is directly connected to competence. If you lack confidence, it's because you lack competence. Become competent at that thing with which you want to be confident. If you're not good at whatever you want to be good at, get good, man, get good. Is there much COVID there? Is there much COVID here in China? Not really. Like I said, China did an exceptional job isolating the COVID situation, locking down 100% completely for 3 months before carrying on business as usual. And Man, Korea did the same thing. South Korea, a couple of other Southeast Asian countries did the same thing, and they're doing okay. But much of the Western world did not, and it's shocking to me. It really is shocking that essentially 2 years later it's still going on, man. Sadly, hopefully we'll get over this thing eventually. Have I played the UFC games? I have, and they are super frustrating because it is easier to fight in real life than it is to fight in those games, especially grappling. The grappling makes no sense in the modern UFC games. It makes no sense. It's easier to finish submissions in real life by a significant margin than it is to finish submissions in the UFC game. It's ridiculous. All right, guys. I'm going to field a couple more questions, then I'm going to get out of here, head over to the gym, and do a strength training workout. So what other questions do you have before we call this quits? All right, we got a question about anger. If I can find it, because we're scrolling. Where is that question? Okay, I lost the question, but the gist of it was this. If you have a problem with anger, what do? Do you meditate? Do you do exercises or whatever? Learn about the miracle of forgiveness, my friends. Forgiveness is letting go of negative feelings that hold you back, including anger. And that's a long-term thing. It's not just something I'm saying, just forgive and forget. No, it's something you got to practice over and over again on a daily basis. Forgive, let go of those negative feelings, practice, just like any other skill. Super chat from Jason G, who says, your opinion on mixing Wing Chun with boxing and BJJ? Great, do it. Do it. If you want to get the most out of a traditional martial art like Wing Chun, also practice combat sports like boxing and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And you're going to find some interesting ways you can link and cross over those different arts. And when you know how to fight for real, when you know how to box, when you know how to grapple, you can find some interesting ways to integrate your Wing Chun into that you would not have been able to do otherwise. Coach Ramsey, what should I avoid in China? What should you avoid in China? You know, when I first got here, there were a lot of tourist scams that were going on, and you don't see them as much anymore. Like, there were a lot of people trying to scam tourists out of their money. There was this famous one, the tea house scam, where they would have some pretty college-age girls try to lure in some male, what do we call them, foreigners, and say, oh, let's go to a tea house and we'll buy some tea, and then you go there and they end up like charging you some exorbitant amount of money if you're not willing to pay it. There's some big burly dudes outside waiting to beat you up or something like that. There was a lot of this stuff that happened back in the day, but it's fairly rare to hear about that. Tony Martin says avoid the wet markets. I wouldn't agree with that. Go to the wet markets. They're awesome. They're great. I love the wet market. Shop there all the time. Freshest produce ever. Great prices. Good stuff there. I don't know why you would say avoid the wet markets. M. Wallace says, I'm training for my first MMA fight. Have you got any exercise advice I can implement to get into superior positions and get better angles to let my hands go? Yeah, I made a video, very simple video about essentially a non-combative boxing drill that you can do to improve your footwork to get those angles. Okay? Let Let me see. Let me see if I can look that up and tell you exactly what it's called. It's called something like footwork drill that nobody's doing. But I'll look it up for you. And let's see here. I got a whole playlist of fighting technique videos on my channel under the playlist tab, which you should all check out, where I address many, many, many of these questions that you guys ask me on a daily basis. But let's see here. Footwork. I got a ton of footwork videos, but this one that I'm thinking of, it's just a very, very simple drill. I'll explain it to you because I'm having trouble finding the link fast enough to get all these questions. Essentially, you stand across from your partner. With your open hand, just try to touch him on the back between the shoulders. He doesn't want you to touch his back. And he tries to touch your back, right between the shoulders. Not touch the shoulders, but touch the back, right? And just do a couple of rounds of that. Do a few rounds of just touch the back. So what ends up happening? You end up learning how to cut angles. Because every time you're in position to touch the back, you're in position to hit the side of the jaw. You are in position to get the good body shots. You're in position to get the liver shots. You are in position to do the real damage. Whereas if you're standing square straight in front of the other guy, then we got to deal with getting that pesky guard out of the way, man. So footwork, simple footwork drills like that can go a very long way to improving your angles in fights. The video is called Easy Boxing Drill to Cut Angles Like a Pro. Alexis, thank you very much. Yes, it is. And does it work? Yes, yes it does. Do that. Man, I warm up with that one in the boxing classes I coach pretty much every single time, and it pays off. All right, let's do one more question here. One more. Martial arts can't work without gravity, so aliens would win. Ooh, true. Am I related to Joseph Smith? No. We're not blood relatives, no. Looking for a nice juicy question here, man. I know your questions are all valid and important, but I said one more and I'm sticking to it. You know what? There's something I've been thinking about. Something I've been thinking about. I'm going to talk about this instead of answering one more question. And maybe it's a silly thing, but I was thinking about this. Tournament fighting video games like Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, that sort of thing, they don't make any sense. The tournament structure doesn't make any sense. Makes no sense. The premise is that it's like an elimination tournament of some kind, but the reality is you have like one guy. Let's take the original Street Fighter 2, the World Warrior. You had 8 guys in the initial roster, right? And there's the player character, and the player character flies around the world and fights each of the 7 fighters one at a time. He has to fight each of the other ones. This is not a single elimination tournament, right? If it was a single elimination tournament, there would be 2 rounds. He would have 2 fights, and then he would go fight the bosses. It makes no sense. So the other guys just kind of chill out in their home country until the player character comes and beats them up and then moves on to the next one. So he's got to compete 7 times in a row before he goes on to the boss fights. What's up with that? Imagine if real fighting tournaments worked like that. Imagine if, in order to get a UFC title, for example, and the UFC does, that structure doesn't really make any sense either, because it's all based on what the matchmakers think rather than an actual tournament structure. Yeah, the bosses get a bye. Exactly, Alexander. The bosses get a bye. I understand that, right? They cheat anyway. But the actual tournament makes no sense. right? But imagine if to get a title shot in the UFC, you had to one by one fight and defeat every single fighter in the division. And they didn't. And the bosses just got a bye, right? Would anybody stand for that? I don't think they would. I don't think they would. It's called game logic. I understand it. I understand the game logic, but it makes no sense. And it's annoying when you stop and think about it. And I like to think about things. Anyway, never stop thinking about things. Maybe I will take one more actual question before I head out to the gym. Actually, that is what Risen sort of does right now. Andrew, you're not far off, man. You're not far off. Okay. This is a question, and I've got this question a lot, but I'm going to answer it because of one little phrase you used. Piano and Martial Arts says, what do I think of Salat? I watched the Belgium 2018 highlights, and it looks like they could destroy anyone in a fight. Okay, Salat is a martial art. There are many different styles of it. It's okay. It's fine. I don't really have any strong opinions about Salat. If you like Salat, great. Keep training it. Get out there and train. It's what I always say. What I'm going to comment on about your question, where you said it looks like they could destroy anyone in a fight. If you're looking at martial artists who look like they can destroy anyone in a fight, particularly if you are not a seasoned expert in the art of fighting, and it just looks like that, what's most likely happening is you are having mismatched fights. You're having someone who is far better than their opponents beating the crap out of substandard competition. And yeah, going back to how we started this, I was talking about the upcoming fight between Jingliang, Chinese fighter, against, how do you say his name, Kazmat Chimaev? Forgive my mispronunciation of his name. But again, everybody's writing off Li Jingliang in this fight because Kazmat has had such alarming and astounding success beating people seemingly with ease. And as far as I can tell, he's fighting guys well below his skill level. So I don't know what it would look like if he fought someone on his level. Will we see that on October 31st? I hope so, because I want to see a fight, not a mismatch. But again, when we see guys who look like they could just destroy anyone in a fight, it's because they're fighting below their skill level. And we see this a lot with these martial arts gurus on the internet. They'll put up, especially the self-defense industry, like these self-defense gurus will put up videos of them doing these really cool-looking moves against 100% cooperative training partners to make them look as cool as possible, to grab your attention, to make you think, man, this guy must be legit. If I train in this self-defense style, I'll be able to beat anybody on the streets. Ooh. But the reality is it's just some guy doing choreography with 100% cooperating training partners. I'm not saying that's what happened in the Salat competition. No, since it was a competition. But you probably saw one guy that was way better than the other guys. Anyway, that's my spiel, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.